There's a delay when you speak, Carmen.
The meeting has started. Okay, let's give it a couple of minutes for some people to join, because we know that the high-level opening event was just now. May I ask all the presenters to try to switch the cameras on? Okay. Shall we start? Well, welcome everybody to this event at the start of the UN 2.0 week. Thank you all very much for joining us today. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you. My name is Carmen Gamon Lázaro, and I work in Strategic Workforce Planning at the United Nations Secretariat. I have the pleasure to have here with me today my colleague Eniola Ladapo from UNOPS, the United Nations Office of Project Services, Jorge Ballestero from UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, and Matthias Gregensen from UN Migration, the immigration, from UN Migration. So we are here to talk to you about the different initiatives that we have from Strategic Workforce Planning to support the Secretary General's vision for UN 2.0. We are going to talk, the four of us, and then it is important that if you have a question, you please write it down under the Q&A section that you'll see on your screens, and we'll get back to you at the end of the session. And when you do so, if you see another question that you like it, then please like it, so that then we can prioritize the questions when we start answering. We all work in Strategic Workforce Planning, and we are going to talk to you today about what we're doing to support UN 2.0. So what is this UN 2.0 all about? You probably all already know, or you might have just heard now at the opening. It is the Secretary General's vision to really help us strengthen the workforce, our culture, our expertise, to better support the member states and the people we serve. So this is particularly important now that we are approaching the 2030 deadline to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Specifically, what is UN 2.0? So it's talking about that we, the workforce, need to strengthen 5 key capabilities, what we call the quintet of change. And these are what you see here on the screen: data, digital, innovation, foresight, and behavioral science capabilities. And we believe that the strategic workforce planning is actually a key enabler for this UN 2.0 transformation. Why is that so? Because it is an organization approach to basically apply foresight to anticipate what the needs of the future workforce are, and then plan for actions and tools and processes for the organization to really get there. So all of us here today, we all practice strategic workforce planning in our organizations, and we also regularly meet and share knowledge and best practices in a dedicated community of practice. Well, of course, it's not only the 4 of us in this community of practice, there's many more, and I am very happy to see other colleagues from the community of practice here in the audience today. So with no further ado, let me hand it over to Jorge, that he will start sharing a little bit more details about all of this. Over to you, Jorge.
Thank you very much, Carmen, and thank you all for joining, colleagues and everyone online. As Carmen said, my name is Jorge Ballestero, and I work in the Division of Human Resources of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. It is indeed an honor and a privilege to be here with you. I'm happy to be sharing with you and looking forward to learning together about this, what I believe to be a fascinating topic. Why are we talking about results-based management, results-based budgeting, and strategic workforce planning? Imagine this. Currently, there are over 110 million people forcibly displaced out of their homes worldwide. This staggering number is not an exaggeration. In fact, there are more individuals under UNHCR protection, 30.5 million to be precise, than at any other point since the Second World War. Yes, more now than at any other point since Second World War. Nearly 1 in every 73 people on Earth is a forcibly displaced person. majority of these people are residing in low and middle income countries. As you're aware, UNHCR, we are the refugee agency, we play a crucial role in providing life-saving assistance and safeguarding the rights of asylum seekers, refugees, and internally displaced persons due to conflict or persecution. Additionally, we advocate for stateless individuals and support those who choose to return to their home countries. This is what we do. And in the face of these huge challenges, it will not come as a surprise to you that we have fully embraced the Secretary General's vision of a very modernized UN system, as reflected in the UN 2.0 initiative. We are taking concrete transformational actions in the 508 locations where the agency is present, in line with the quint of change that Carmen has shown a couple of minutes ago. We are talking about data, digital, innovation, foresight, and behavioral science. Now, has any of you had the opportunity to interact with my director, Kathy Bennett? Kathy is the director of HR, and if you have spent a brief 5 minutes with her, you will recognize the 3 pillars that underpin people management within UNHCR that you have on the screen. As an enabling function, in DHR, we firmly believe that our ability to better protect, support, and deliver results for refugees and other people forced to flee hinges on attracting, retaining, and developing the people with the requisite competencies and capabilities to transform goodwill commitments into tangible realities, even within a very exhaustingly volatile environment. So it's all about people. But we also recognize that we cannot achieve this alone. We cannot achieve results and translate commitments into realities only with our people. So we emphasize the importance of both internal and external partnerships, this client orientation. And furthermore, we acknowledge that what may have been effective yesterday might not suffice today, and certainly will not be enough or sufficient for tomorrow. As such, we actively embrace innovation, leverage technology, and continuously adapt our processes, and also our organizational culture to meet the escalating demands despite this diminishing funding. And that is, as highlighted by Carmen in the introduction, where strategic workforce planning plays a critical role as an enabler. And which is why, as you will see in the next slide, in 2023, UNHCR developed 2 handbooks, one for program planning, done by the Division of Strategic Planning and Results, and another for workforce planning, done by DHR. We additionally updated one handbook on field presence, where we establish what kind of offices we have and what size of offices. Well, in this updated version, we incorporated inputs from every division and staffing indicators. Importantly, despite the difference between the authorship and target audiences, these 3 handbooks are fully aligned. And this, colleagues, it's key. And the challenge to get everyone to talk, despite the high specialization that we all have, is that we need to be able to understand that we go hand in hand when we are doing program planning and strategic planning. If we don't talk about the results we want to achieve with the people we need to achieve them, then that's a problem. And of course, now the challenge we have in UNHCR is to make sure that the theoretical alignment is equally aligned in the implementation in the field. If we go to the next, and to be concise and allow more time to discuss, our recommendation to operations is to adopt a multi-year results-based budgeting alongside with the strategic workforce planning. At the same time. This typically spanning 3 years is the way we see the best way forward. This approach involves clearly identifying outcome, outputs, and indicators, and then aligning the structures and staffing to these outputs, outcomes, and indicators. Once this foundational step is complete, we employ scenario-based planning, and we consider best, most likely, and worst case scenarios to prioritize outputs. And we then carefully consider the staffing and structural implications when circumstances necessitate making choices among those outputs. You see, the secret here which is easier said than done, is that rather than adjusting structures and staffing reactively based on funding constraints that the UN is facing worldwide, we are encouraging our operations to adjust, plan deliverables, and then align the staffing to these realities. The resulting staffing and structural changes should naturally follow as a consequence of the adjusted results. As I said, it's easier said than done, absolutely. Implementing effective workforce planning is no small feat. However, we have identified 4 critical success factors that hopefully might warrant your attention. First, we understood that a collaborative approach is indispensable. Workforce planning is not a linear process. It requires a multifunctional teamwork and not sequential handoffs. The traditional line production, where one task feeds into the next, can hinder a strategic vision, implementation agility, and overall effectiveness. You start with the program planners and then go to the subject matter experts and then goes HR. It really doesn't work because you see in the planning proposal that it is a consolidation of separate and not integrated a strategy. We are recommending that subject matter experts, the results owners, and program personnel and HR practitioners work together and work collaboratively to build a theory of change underpinning the outcomes, the outputs, and the indicators. Remember, workforce planning extends beyond HR. It is a collective effort, but more importantly, it is a key managerial responsibility. Workforce planning is not just an HR thing. We're not there yet at the end of the process to say, okay, we need 2 or 3 or more, or how do we do this recruitment, or what is the job description that is required for this. Second, integration with budgeting and planning. Results-based budgeting and strategic planning must seamlessly incorporate a strategic workforce planning. We need to determine the profile, location, number of personnel needed for implementation, to determine what is the how, the what, and the who. We must understand existing competencies within our workforce and identify gaps. Not all of us are ready to do what is needed, and we need to be nimble and agile, and that's where we talk about reskilling, reprofiling. And that's where we might be able to develop, recruit, or loan from other providers. Third, we have observed that prioritization and coherence is critical. Designing structures and staffing cannot be an afterthought. It should not solely depend on funding, and I apologize for reiterating this, but it is critical, and should not be done in isolation from programmatic implications. We cannot continue doing more with less. It simply is not feasible. Our colleagues cannot do it, and on top, the results that we are achieving are not what we expect. Instead, we must align prioritized results, outcomes, and outputs into a broad framework, ideally including an operations typology and associated staffing indicators. This will help ensure coherence and consistency. At the end of the day, it's all about being able to compare apples and apples. Fourth and last, we identified cultural shift and digital literacy as a success factor. A strategic workforce planning necessitates a culture change. Colleagues and participants, what we did in the past might certainly not be what we need in the future. We need to prioritize data-driven decision-making and digital literacy, which is why the UN 2.0 is the perfect setup for this cultural change. Leadership commitment is crucial. It must be championed from the top and implemented from the bottom. We need to foster a culture that values evidence-based choices and embraces digital tools. And this is what we've done in UNHCR with these 3 handbooks that I shared with you before. I know some of you might say that our aspirations are mere dreams, that it's very theoretical, but we consider ourselves to be both realistic and optimistic. Driving change within a 70-year-old humanitarian organization as UNHCR, comprising over 20,000 dedicated individuals, is not easy. Yet, we embrace this Herculean task while steadfastly delivering on our challenging mandate. And believe you me, we are striving to do it. Slow, with setbacks, with challenges, but we're committed to navigating the road of change. We take pride in the progress we've achieved so far, and moreover, we firmly believe that in the volatile and demanding environments in where we operate, this is the optimal path. This is the way that we can achieve better results for those who need it most, and also to be more efficient, adjusting our workforce sprint in response to evolving operational context. Time will judge if we are right or wrong, and if we chew more than we could beat, but at least, colleagues and participants, we are hopeful that our contribution will help in the Secretary General's vision of a UN boasting cutting-edge skills and a forward-thinking culture, and that this will trigger stronger results, better support to member states, and of course, a greater SDG impact. I look forward to the questions and comments, and back to Carmen for more details on how we do this. Over.
Thank you very much, Jorge. And now that for this inspirational introduction into the strategic workforce planning, at the United Nations Secretariat, we share this vision for strategic workforce planning that Jorge just explained. So now that you have a better understanding of what this is all about, I'd like to give you more details of an initiative that we are working to, so that you can see what the strategic workforce planning can then lead to implementation in practice. So as you have just heard, strategic workforce planning is a matter of preparing for the future needs of the workforce, and it's key that we prioritize and that we put together the necessary elements to allow the organization to get there. The processes, the tool, the people, we need to align them all. So we have a clear priority setting here with UN 2.0. We know that we want the workforce to reinforce their data, digital, innovation, foresight, and behavioral science capabilities to better deliver on their mandates. So in strategic workforce planning, we are focusing on seeing how to do that and how to basically put all the machinery in place to allow the organization to get to that point. And a very important starting point for this is actually to ensure that our jobs are reflecting what we need from the workforce. So that's why that's why we're embarking in a job analysis at the UN Secretariat to basically confirm that our jobs are really demanding from the workforce, the skills and the responsibilities aligned to these 5 areas. And then also that we have the right jobs to move data, digital, innovation, and foresight and behavioral science forward. And this job analysis, we cannot do it on our own. Like anything in strategic workforce planning, this is not just a human resources activity. And the same goes for the job analysis. We actually do this by engaging with a diverse group of experts in the different subject matter areas. And then we ask them to reflect on the current and future needs of the workforce with a special emphasis on the UN 2.0 quintet of change capabilities. This allows us basically to then see, okay, let's revise the existing job descriptions. Let's see if we need new job descriptions. So at the end, we have these job profiles 2.0 that really include responsibilities, requirements, skills around all these 5 capabilities. Then one of the key success factors for this is that we need to be inclusive. So it is important at the UN Secretariat, we work in a variety of contexts, geographies with multiple organizations across peace and security, rule of law, humanitarian affairs, human rights, sustainable development, and also operational and strategic departments to support their functions. So it is important that our job analysis takes into account all these differences, while at the same time setting the common ground and standards with the apples and apples that Jorge was saying. So that's why we call it generic job profiles 2.0. And also in the language that we use for these job descriptions, it is important that it reflects the diversity of the peoples that we serve. So having this clarity of what we need then allows us to align everything else. I'm going to talk about human resources initiatives here, but this is not only about that. So talent acquisition, if we know the jobs, if we have the job descriptions up to date, then we can really prepare also our selection process so that we are assessing for those skills in data analytics, for example. At the same time, even just having the right job title, it helps for the candidates to really recognize and understand that this is one of the jobs that they can apply for. Having those skills clear allows us also to plan for learning and development activities to upskill and reskill our staff. If this is something that interests you, I know my colleagues are having another side event on Thursday, and I invite you to join and find out more about these learning activities that they are putting in place for the upskilling and reskilling in UN 2.0. Then, of course, when we go and look for talent, knowing exactly what kind of skills we need, if we now need to know Gen AI, for example, then it's much more helpful if we have that on those job descriptions. And our workforce at large can also better plan for their careers because they know what is needed for them, and then they can proactively also engage in the necessary development actions for it. All of this is conducive to this UN 2.0 transformation. But again, it's not just human resources. We need the leaders and the managers to support this action, to put them in practice, to include them in their budgets. All of that Jorge also explained, to really make this transformation possible. And this job analysis is not going to be a one-time thing. It needs to be, because the jobs and the expectations are in constant evolution, especially think about these capabilities. They are constantly evolving and the needs for them are as well. So we're building in a process to actually continuously improve our job descriptions to ensure that we can keep them up to date in an agile way. So let me tell you what this job analysis can mean in practice. So at the end, having these generic job profiles 2.0 can mean three main things. Either that we actually have new jobs, new job descriptions, that we add something to existing job descriptions, or that we change a job completely or mostly. So when we're talking about new jobs, think in mind that it's not that maybe they were not done at all, but rather that we're actually standardizing their descriptions, ensuring that we have the right job title. And examples of these that we've developed recently were in the area of cybersecurity, data privacy, and protection. And these also, we prioritize them because they are profiles in high demand. So it is very important for us to be able to get those cybersecurity people that we need, that we actually have job descriptions that are targeting them specifically. Then when we talk about adding to jobs, we are talking about basically new responsibilities or skills around the workforce capabilities. If we want to elevate, also, as Jorge said, the data-driven decision-making, so then we need to ensure that really our responsibilities are reflecting that and that we're asking for those data analytics and management skills. We would like our managers to apply foresight so that they can anticipate different scenarios and then work for those risks associated with them. Then it is also important that we clearly outline those needs in the job descriptions. And then in some cases, we also need to prepare for some changes, some jobs that might be changing a little bit more because of specifically the digital transformation. So this is slowly happening as we are introducing new technologies that basically shift the responsibilities. And like, for example, by introducing the Internet of Things to measure the supplies of in the peacekeeping operation, then the need is more to know how to collect data, interpret data, and not so much a mechanical manual monitoring of supplies. Or now the Gen AI that it's like in the minds of all of us, we need to start preparing for it today to understand what it means, what are the skills that will be needed to the workforce to actually get advantage, not take advantage of the opportunities that it brings. So these are just examples of possible changes of jobs that will result from the job analysis. But this is a continuous process that we need to do to be able to adjust the rest of the organization to it. And as part of strategic workforce planning, we'll continue scanning the horizon and adapting to the needs for the future and partner with the rest of the organization to really support the transformation of the workforce. So with this, let me hand it over to Eniola. He will explain us how UNOPS actually has embraced the capabilities to go for a complete transformation. Over to you, Eniola.
Thanks a lot, Carmen. I work with UNOPS, which is the United Nations Office for Project Services. And as the name implies, we're a project-based organization and the operations arm of the United Nations Development System, which means that we work with partners around the world, governments, international financial institutions, other UN system organizations to strengthen and expand their capacity to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals and other objectives. Now, for us in UNOPS, UN 2.0 is actually a critical driver of our ongoing culture and digital transformation. But for the purpose of this conversation, I'll focus on its relevance to digital transformation and the implications we are seeing for strategic workforce planning. If you look at our current multi-year strategic plan, which is actually publicly available, we actually make reference to the components of UN 2.0 as accelerators of digital transformation. But at the same time, digital transformation for us in UNOPS responds to a specific set of challenges and opportunities. So in terms of challenges, we've gone through many years of underinvestment in digital. And during that period, we've worked to address the gap, essentially by layering on more steps and decisions to existing processes and workflows. Not surprisingly, that is not working. So we are pivoting now to digital transformation so that we can get to that future state where we are able to increase the positive impact of the projects that we deliver on behalf of our partners. And at the same time, we also help our partners to deliver on their SDG ambitions through approaches that are simple, efficient, and sustainable. So this is what digital transformation looks like for us in UNOPS. It's about process innovation, which essentially means that we are taking a critical look at our core processes, we are analyzing them, we are simplifying and streamlining them. And then it's also about digitalization. So at the same time, we are also exploring the market to identify digital and AI-enabled solutions through which we can deploy the optimized processes. And so that's why we call our digital transformation program Process Innovation and Digitalization, or PID for short. Now, if you go on to the next slide, here you are able to see an enterprise overview of our digital transformation. You can see that it touches and extends across what I describe as our core value chain processes. And I'm talking about procurement, I'm talking about partnership, project management, finance, HR. And then underpinning all of these solutions will be a range of planning, modeling, and reporting tools that we can plug into the new ERP that we are also acquiring as part of this transformation. Our digital transformation is multi-year, so it's from 2023 to 27. And as we implement the solutions, we'll be in a strong position as an organization to embed and scale UN 2.0 capabilities as organizational capabilities. On the next slide, we are also having strategic conversations around how do we break down, how do we cascade these organizational capabilities, data, digital innovation, behavioral science, and foresight? How do we translate them into individual and team level competencies? So within the context of our digital transformation, we are also pursuing some very specific opportunities and initiatives, some of which I want to highlight here. So firstly, it's about visibility and currency of skills. Now, one of the key HR deliverables for our digital transformation is an internal talent marketplace. So essentially, a platform that allows us to algorithmically match the hundreds of opportunities that surface in UNOPS with the range of skills that our people bring to work every day. And over the next 1 year or thereabouts, we'll be delivering this solution. And it's very clear to us that as part of that change, we'll be moving away from the current paradigm where HR is expected to actively identify and inventorize the skills that are in supply and demand in the organization, to a different, I would say, a more distributed approach where apart from HR, our people also have greater agency in creating their skills profiles. And then they would also, I mean, both HR and personnel will also be assisted by skills inferencing, which will be done by the AI and machine learning functionalities of the platform. Now, when we talk about currency of skills, we mean that in the lexical term, in the lexical sense of the mobility of skills, the circulation of skills in the organization. And there's recent research out there that points to the critical role that line managers and supervisors play in facilitating mobility within the organization. So part of the change also means that for us, we'll be investing in developing line managers and supervisors' confidence, their competence, and their commitment to actually posting opportunities within and across their teams, from short-term gigs to stretch assignments to long-term assignments, and also generally encouraging mobility of talent, mobility of skills to where the work needs to be done, which is essential for us being a project-based or project-driven organization. Obviously, our existing talent management policies and processes will also need to be updated to be more flexible, more agile, to reflect the different ways in which people can move in the organization. We are also working on improving workforce intelligence around diversity and inclusion. So essentially, that means that for the different HR solutions that we'll be deploying as part of digital transformation, we'll be looking at improved functionalities for gathering self-identifying data. Right now, a lot of the data we gather on diversity is really focused more on gender and geographical representation, but we're also looking at data around disability, around race, around sexual orientation, and so forth. And the whole purpose of that really is for us to be able to leverage this data and continuously improve and formulate more inclusive practices and policies within the organization. And finally, another massive opportunity area for us really is around generative AI and digital dexterity. So we will be prototyping and rolling out Gen AI for use in interrogating structured and unstructured data. Now, like any UN organization, we deal with tons of data in UNOPS, reports, processes, policies, instructions, directives, and so forth. So it will be a big boost in terms of productivity at team and individual levels for our colleagues to have tools that allows them to easily search for information, organize, curate, summarize, all of that information. And of course, with Gen AI comes the need to ensure that we are training and helping our users to apply the knowledge, essentially help them to gain, I think, what a recent Microsoft report describes as AI aptitude, which is the ability to write effective prompts, to be able to critically evaluate creative work, and also to be able to check for bias. We are also talking about digital dexterity, which for us in UNOPS really means raising awareness of the variety of tools, systems, and tech that will be rolling out as part of our transformation, and also helping our colleagues to build the relevant competencies to apply these tools as they come online. So that's where we're at currently, and I think this is a good place to pause and hand the mic over to Matthias from IOM. Over to you, Matthias.
Thank you very much, Eniola, and indeed a good transition to my bit, which is, as you can see in the top right, a bit about Copilot. So this concept of digital dexterity presented by Eniola and digital literacy by Jorge are concepts that we in IOM are also very much looking into and will be the focus of this bit. We're going to take a bit of a deep dive, so not so high level, but specifically what's happening these days within IOM. So IOM's mandate is we are supporting migrants of all forms and shapes, and the visual you have in front of you is depicting the growth of migrants over the last, some 30 years. In the last 5 years, we've seen roughly a 3% year-over-year increase in the number of migrants around the world. And simply by forecasting based on that, we see that there's a growing demand to which we must ask ourselves, how is IOM going to cope? So this is a classic strategic workforce planning challenge, one that has a lot of different answers, but one of the answers, which we're going to go through here, that we have chosen to go by is by upskilling and training our workforce in present and future relevant skills related to these advancing technologies such as Copilot and general digital dexterity. So what you'll see here on this slide is how we approached it. As of March this year, our IT department has been rolling out Copilots, and the latest figure shows that we have more than 3,000 active users today. Roughly 15% of IOM's total population are using Copilot. But just having Copilot also requires training, and the technologies are developing so fast that in order to reap the full potential, it requires additional training and organizational prioritization. So which begs the question, for who is this relevant and who's interested? And while relevancy and interest are important, we have to also consider that as a financial aspect. Each license has a cost. And then the next question you see to the right is, what do we need to do in order to prepare and improve on our colleagues that are already using Copilot and related data-centric tools? And finally, how do we gauge and improve on staff at large's data dexterity levels, which are fundamental to effectively using tools such as Copilot? So our approach was to do it holistically by first defining a framework, which you see the 3 main steps of below, that could help guide us answering these questions. So step 1 was to identify which data-related components can speak theoretically to a position's data dexterity requirements, or the person that's already encompassing that position and the competency needs of that position. So that's what you have in the framework components. Step 2 in the middle is we needed to introduce a hierarchy to these components so that we could better target upskilling efforts and grouping of colleagues. So while all of us, or the majority of us, we use data in our daily work and positions as well, how we use it is different. And then finally, we had to then take the framework, merge it into IOM's current position hierarchy and structure without reinventing the wheel. So what we did was that through some best practice research and with our partner in this, which is Microsoft, we honed in on 4 components that you see to the left. And I would guess this also seems quite intuitive for all. So, for example, the more your work requires you to use data, the more important is having or achieving a certain data dexterity level. And the same goes for the complexity of the work you do with the data, the specific domain expertise, and what are the consequences of the work one does with the data. So that resulted in these 4 items. And then to exemplify the hierarchy for each one of them, I pulled out for the frequency of data use. You'll see in the language used, I've underlined the continuum that is in effect the expression of the hierarchy. And the same applies to the other components, but I'm not showing them right here. But it helped us also create these 3 groups, general, advanced, and experts, which helped us create these targeted learning objectives and tailored upskilling paths. And then finally, once we had the framework, we reused the UN grade scale, position-specific elements, and organizational belongings to either include or exclude. For example, an average G4 team assistant would not land as high, if you will, on each of these 4 components you see on the left and the hierarchies as an average P4 data scientist. But to make it even more explicit, G2 driver versus an IT technician, a G7 IT technician. So what you'll see here on the next slide is that once we put all of this together, first off, we identified we had around 15,000 staff that would fall into a category we've coined foundational, which will focus on the very basics, what's data security, implications, items like that. Now, on top of that, we then have this pyramid of sorts, where you'll see, again, these 3 different groups, general, advanced, and experts, with 500, 1,400, and 200 respectively, which corresponds to the amount of positions and encumbering by individuals who will be getting targeted learning paths offered as a one-time deal, but will also enable us for any future individuals who wants to start on any of these paths to then join in on a training path that will then upskill them, so that once you are done with general, let's say, you can then start off on advanced. So that's what you see on the right-hand side. I've tried to then show for general the full framework where we have this continuum and the hierarchy, if you will, expressed as specifically for the general group. Now, we're partnering with Microsoft on this one because we, within IOM, we have a strong commitment with the Microsoft technology stack, meaning that for this general learning path, we developed 3 horizons that are 2 months each, and they go over specific trainings on Azure, data fundamentals, the Power Platform as a whole, fundamentals, and then there's also AI components within it on Azure AI fundamentals. And these change depending on which group you fall into or which one you choose to start up on. So to wrap all of this up, as I indicated in the beginning or insinuated, and I think it also became quite clear from my co-presenters' content, is that these efforts nowadays are in effect not optional luxuries. They're more akin to hard requirements. For IOM, for example, Copilot and data literacy, upskilling is a long-term investment in our workforce, just like the examples provided by Carmen, Jorge, and Yola, in anticipation of a world that just keeps on speeding up, it seems. And without these investments, it's impossible to satisfy our stakeholders' expectations of us. And it's impossible for us to exceed the expectations of our stakeholders and ultimately fulfill to a greater extent each of our organization's mandates. So with that, I want to thank you all for chiming in and listening. And I will then have a look at the Q&A part of this and then see if we have some questions. Oh, I see we have some here. There's one with 2 thumbs up at the bottom. I think I'll start with that one from Basal. So I'll read it out loud and then I'll see who wants to join in. So it's an interesting discussion on work planning. However, I'm a bit delusional with how workforce is managed in our organization. In reality, we do not keep track of knowledge, expertise, and training status of a staff, and therefore we have no idea of how to use them effectively. I hope and pray that UN 2.0 addresses this vital issue. I see some nodding. Do we have somebody who would like to speak to that, or is
maybe
it more
can I just jump on it
please?
On just sharing good news. If you hear, colleagues, what we've all said, all of our organizations are building on platforms that actually capture skills, right? If Eniola was saying, we no longer have to wait only for HR to be the convener to match demand with offer. Technology now allows us, and all of the organizations, I'm sure they're doing it, but the 4 that are presenting here, that's the advantage of the platforms that we're developing, precisely to be able to use platforms similar to LinkedIn, right? In which you have a set of skills, you report your skills, and then based on it, you match one or the other. Different approaches, different levels of success. But the good news, to respond to the question, is we've realized that we need to be able to match demand with skills and also fill the gap when we see that we have a need for something and we don't have the skills available. So how can we fill that gap in terms of upskilling or recruiting? Hope this helps.
And maybe I can add to that one of the things that our community of practices in strategic workforce planning has at its core is also finding a common ground when it comes to skills. So it can be transitioned from one to another. And some of us, we are not fully there with capturing skills per individual. But once we have that, we have the most granular data needed in order to better meet the needs that we see. And it pertains to this question from Mina that has also at least one thumbs up. I'm just going to read it aloud and then you can hear. What frameworks do you have in mind for hiring of young people in these areas, specifically foresight, since they're coming from more contemporary programs and are often very well suited, but are often not considered? So if your skill is relevant, and I sincerely believe that's the case, the way that you frame this question, you will be considered because your skill is important, not your age, right? So I think that's a key thing with strategic workforce planning that we are trying to bring to the table and get us all up to speed on that one. There is a question from, where was I saw one? From Glenn, and then it cuts off, but Glenn-Paulo is more than that, apologies. Let me read it out loud. Hi, I've recently heard of the digital transformation at UN, and I tried to register for UN. It was a very lengthy process with a number of forms that someone outside of UN organization family would struggle with. Can you explain how you're planning to secure the right new talent for data/digital, making it accessible to candidates working with the business outside of the UN? I see some nodding. Anybody who wants to jump on that?
Yeah, no, this question is right on the spot. No, that's one of the objectives of the job analysis, for example, that we're doing to ensure that our jobs are looking for the right talent and also speaking the language of it. So we're on it, and that's one of the basically the initiatives. And also, when doing so, like Matthias just explained, we're trying to align more and more to each other, you know, to make it really a UN system-wide effort.
All right, I have one here that from Inji Vasseur, I think. First off, some kudos to all of us. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to jump to the question itself. Regarding strategic workforce planning efforts, how did you manage cross-functional coordination with different reporting lines and complex structures? And how did you manage data consistency on top of this? And then there's some additional, do you use Agile or Scrum methodologies, all of them combined? So I think you must have an IT background. I can kind of extrapolate that. So first off, the first one, how do we manage cross-functional coordination with different reporting lines and complex structures? Anybody who wants to jump on that one?
So let me quickly, I think the simple and direct, I think the short answer from my own side to that question really is that for those of us sitting in HQ, for those of us in the center, our role really is to provide the framework and the tools, and also the advice and the training and on how that framework works and how to use those tools. But ultimately, it is the offices in the countries who are much closer to the action, who understand their priorities, who will then use the framework and the tools to then build their workforce plans. And ultimately, and then for us, our role in HQ is to integrate all of that information, to review all of that information, and in an iterative way, ensure that we have a plan in place. But I think it's just very important to stress that the whole point of strategic workforce planning is not to have a plan. It's actually to have the right workforce in place. So it's okay if you have a plan today and then you find that tomorrow, because of all the changes around you, you need to make some changes to that. I think that's the reality of workforce planning today. But in very simple terms, the way to cut through all of that complexity is to be very clear about the role of HQ in relation to the different countries where the organization operates.
And maybe I can add to this one as well. So within IOM, and I'm sure it's quite common within the UN system, we are using a business partnering model, meaning that within HR, individuals sit, that is kind of the binding matter or line, if you will, between the front end of the business, if you will, and HR. So there's individuals within HR that focuses on workforce planning, strategic workforce planning, that in collaboration with this HR business partner goes out and then considers the complexity of that specific situation, because it would be impossible for HR to do all of that with organizations 20,000 staff plus. So you need to deploy some kind of measure that enables that agility. Yes.
If I
Yes.
we will jump at it. That's fantastic.
Yeah, we love this topic, so we could talk forever. I mean, yeah, I would agree to all of that, and Justin, I suppose that's what Jorge also was wanting to say, is that we need to take into account also the strategic component, the programmatic component, no? We need to work together and ensure that we get that input, no? So on the implementation side, yes, that's what Matthias is saying. We need to have that network and to be close to the implementations and sort of feedback, because to Eniola's point, and we need to be agile and adapt. I mean, cannot be static. And we also, to navigate the different of mandates, the different structures, we need to incorporate them in, and we need them to have them in the conversation. The priority setting is very important, and the priority setting needs to come from the business side of things, basically. Jorge?
No, yesterday I was in a meeting with the auditors, and they were asking how do you explain this thing? And I said, maybe the issue of thinking of design helps, and the question was about managing the complexity. Well, this is basically moving from a Baroque design, beautiful and complex, into a minimalist design. And workforce planning in the 21st century, it's about the architecture of an organization. However, the architecture which we want to be minimalistic, and that's why the High Commission in UNHCR is talking about flattening structures, this minimalist approach is at the design level. But then you have we are the architects, those doing workforce planning, strategic workforce planning are the architects. But then you have engineers that will tell you, well, the plan is fantastic, but you need to move the rock. You cannot. You have this policy or you have this political issue that you cannot manage. So you have to adjust the plan. And lastly, you have the builders. And the builders will tell you, well, this is fantastic, but we don't have that material here in this specific operation, as Eniola was saying. Yeah. All of you are fantastic, but neither the architect nor the engineer know what's going on the ground. So if you do that, it's not going to work because we cannot replace it. So long story short, it's all about going back to the basics in terms of plan, implement, and adjust. Don't go till the end on implement. First plan.
I think I don't see any more questions, but I think I can extrapolate one from Mohammed Fasal, talking about how keeping track of your knowledge, expertise, and training status of staff, and how that is done. So, and is wishing for that to be done effectively. Anybody wants to speak a bit about how that is tracked or not within your respective organizations? I can maybe start a bit. So it's very much an ERP related question, right? Depending on the maturity level on that. So within IOM, we are also in the midst of, it seems like we're a bit ahead of you, Eniola, but in the midst of also implementing a new learning management system that will enable keeping track of this kind of information in a structured format, feeding into strategic workforce planning initiatives, analyses, and forecasting. So with that, you'll be able to know, oh, Matthias, he's separating. He was the one who knew about Excel, right? And then that would enable that. So I don't know if I took took what you were about to say, Eniola.
No, I think the simple answer I also wanted to just give to that is technology is key. So again, it depends on the maturity of your organization's investments in the digital technology that's required to do that. I think it's really difficult in the kind of environment in which we operate now, if you really want to keep track of how of the impact of your investments in learning and development. You just need to make the necessary investments in the digital tools and technologies that will help you do that.
Excellent.
So at the end of the day, this brings us back to UN 2.0, no? So with the strategic workforce planning, not only we are, building these capabilities in the workforce and planning for it, but we also need these capabilities to make a strategic workforce planning more efficient. And also this community of practice is so valuable for that, because we share this knowledge and we learn from each other, and we can also find synergies that are so important, no? Because at the end of the day, we're one UN, and we all share the same values and they share the same goals. So this is what all of this is about. Any final thoughts before we close? Because I don't see any more questions, or maybe there's something else.
Oh, happy to see the interest that we oh, there's one more. Let's have a look. What foresight methodology has been most successful when it comes to successful strategic workforce planning through the interagency collaboration? All right.
Can you repeat the question?
What foresight methodology has been most useful to you when it comes to successful strategic workforce planning through the interagency collaboration?
Okay, we actually just had a strategic foresight workshop within the interagency strategic workforce planning community of practice. I don't think I can tell you which one is most successful, because we haven't tested many of them, right? But we did use the futures wheel, and we actually discussed, and then we did some backwards planning as well. And that's how we came up with common initiatives to grow together a strategic workforce planning in the UN system. So we can definitely share more on as we advance more ourselves on our foresight methodologies.
I don't know. We're 1 minute over time, Carmen. I don't know if like we could continue. There's more questions, but I think we have to wrap it up, right?
Yes, I guess so. We also started a little bit late, so it's fine. And yes, the recording, I believe, will be shared as with the other events. I think, well, thank you all so much for joining. Thank you for your interest in strategic workforce planning. Remember that this is all about changing the culture, supporting the workforce, and that we need everyone in the workforce to contribute to it, everyone in the organization. So thank you very much for joining, and please continue in the UN 2.0 week. There are a lot of very interesting events coming up.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Congrats.
Bye.